Well, hold on.
So I spend a lot of time
I actually like Vox, and I think that this looks kind of informative. I like that.
looking at houses on Zillow. And lately, I noticed that even in places where houses are usually expensive, they seem even
Austin.
more expensive.
What was that?
And lately, I noticed that even in places where houses are usually expensive, they seem
This is kind of nice, though.
even more expensive. Like here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, no shit.
What has the last year been like?
It's shocking. Buyers are paying 15 to 20% above asking price now. I had a listing in South San Francisco, 32 offers, 31 very unhappy buyers.
For years, the Bay Area has been an extreme example of how difficult it is to find affordable housing in the US. It's where Silicon Valley bus drivers sleep in their cars at night because they can't afford housing near work, and where school teachers can't afford to live in the counties they teach. But it's
That
not
is
just
terrible,
the Bay Area.
dude. That
the
is
lack
actually
of affordable
terrible.
housing is a national problem, and right now it's worse than ever.
We've
Jesus!
seen over the last year, housing prices reach a level that they've never reached before in American history. They kind of just look like a rocket ship, you know, going to the moon. Housing prices reaching a median of $350,000 for a median American.
Wait, that's why my house got so much value. Because I'm pretty sure I bought it like in 2020 or whatever, and now we're kind of over here. The house.
Those prices have made rents more expensive and have made homeownership less attainable for millions of Americans.
So, why is this happening? And how do we bring that rocket ship closer to Earth? We can think of today's housing prices in terms of a supply and
Wait, you think it's a bubble?
demand problem. On the demand
Oh, should I
side,
sell it?
there are a few things happening. The first is a generational shift in who's buying homes.
Millennials are the biggest generation in American history, and they're aging into their prime home buying years.
On top of that, mortgage rates are at an all-time low, which means it's very cheap to borrow the money needed to buy a house. That's enticed more people to buy if they
2%?
can, making demand for houses even higher. The problem is that supply isn't matching that demand.
2%.
From 2010 to 2019, there were fewer homes built in the US than in any decade since the 1960s. In particular, the construction of smaller, entry-level housing, the kind made for first-time homebuyers, has dropped
it's going way down.
dramatically.
Yeah, we've seen this before. We've seen something like this
In the
before.
1980s, those starter homes made up around 40% of all homes built. Today, it's closer to 7%. In 2018, one estimate said the U.S. housing market was 2.5 million homes
That's
short
really
of
stupid,
meeting
though.
demand. By the end of 2020, it was 3.8 million.
And that's driving a big part of the problem, both for renters and for people who want to be homeowners.
The shortage is worst in the places where demand is highest, near good jobs, transit, and schools. And one pretty straightforward solution to that
So
is
nobody
to just
builds
build more
entry-level
homes in
houses
those places.
that are like affordable.
But for years, there's been
Everybody
one
builds late
big
game.
obstacle to that. We aren't allowed to.
What?
Take a look.
Huh?
Obstacle to that. We aren't allowed to. Take a look at this map of the Bay Area. It's showing something called zoning, or local regulations that decide what can be
it's
built
illegal.
where. This much of the region is zoned for residential housing. In blue are areas zoned to allow multifamily housing, while the areas shaded in pink are zoned for single-family housing only. That's 82% of all residential land in the Bay Area.
What it means is that you've banned the ability for anyone to build anything other than a single.
Is this everywhere in the world though, or is this mostly like American first world dog shit?
unit of housing on that lot of land.
And in many towns, like Atherton, they've excluded all
This is
multifamily
the most
housing from their
NA shit I've ever heard in my life.
And that doesn't just mean a giant apartment building. It means things like duplexes, things like fourplexes, things like that are illegal in the majority of the country.
Illegal!
This is an example of something called exclusionary zoning. It's a big part of the reason for the housing supply shortage in the US. And single-family only zoning is just one way local laws limit how much housing we can build. Many places also employ height restrictions. In Cupertino, California, some areas are zoned for multifamily buildings, but they don't allow any buildings over 2 stories. Parking requirements are often written into zoning laws too. Cupertino requires developers to set aside space for 2 parking spaces for each unit of multifamily housing. That means if you were building an apartment complex that had 100 units, you'd need to find space for 200 parking spots, which usually means buildings that size don't get built at all.
They lower the number of units they're actually building so they can save.
It's almost like that, like they're purposely making a bunch of rules that makes it so nobody is gonna do it because it makes no sense at all.
Space for those parking spaces.
So it's like either you can't, or if you do, you're brain dead. So you just can't either.
And then those units become more expensive because the land still stays the same cost to the developer. And you then get a situation where potentially more affordable units turn into higher income servicing units.
Another feature of many zoning laws is minimum lot sizes. It means builders are legally required to allot a minimum amount of land for each home, often a large amount of land.
Why?
In Cupertino, most single-family lots must be at least 5,000 square feet each.
What?
Starter homes are usually around 1,400 to 1,500 square feet, and so you've basically banned all that type of housing.
In Atherton, the minimum lot size for homes is 1 acre. More than 43,000 square feet, which makes it virtually impossible to build any kind of affordable home there. Together, exclusionary zoning laws like this push builders across the country to focus on bigger, luxury homes instead of smaller starter homes or multifamily housing.
Essentially creating gated communities in public spaces. What you are saying is that you are only allowing people who have already been able to partake in the wealth of this country and to grow their income and have access to high opportunity jobs and education to live in our neighborhoods.
Historically, some of the first zoning laws in the US were engineered for that exactly, to block people of color, and in particular Black Americans, from living in predominantly white neighborhoods. Today, the laws don't explicitly mention race, but they continue to worsen segregation. In the Bay Area, the more single-family zoning in a neighborhood, the wider it is. But all this has enough.
But I don't get it though. How is it just? I don't want to seem or sound naive, but how do you just fix it? Okay. Isn't there like a couple laws that they can put to like overwrite or like something they can just go ahead and just fix and change?
But all this has
like who would be against this or against fixing it?
Another effect as well. By shrinking
Can't
the
you be
pot of
like,
new house.
oh, here's a problem. Here's why it's a problem. Look at it. Okay. Do you guys want to fix it? Yes, fix it.
Housing getting built, while demand keeps rising, it drives up the cost of housing for everyone. Changing zoning laws can be difficult, and often the biggest obstacles are the wealthiest residents.
The process is usually defined by who shows up to these public meetings. And what you have is often a much whiter, wealthier crowd. The ones who come and say, I don't want this in my community. I'm concerned about what will happen to my property values. And then there's this kind of code
people
word,
don't want to
neighborhood
lose
character.
Oh,
Remember
yikes.
those teachers I mentioned who can't afford to live in the counties where they teach? Well, in 2018, one local school district proposed a solution: building affordable housing units for teachers in San Jose. It caused an uproar among San Jose parents.
That is so sad.
That
is so weird, dude. I feel like teachers are so important. Teachers are like the very foundation of like almost everything. I don't know why teachers don't get an easier time. It makes no sense to me.
It may not seem like a big deal when one wealthy neighborhood blocks
every successful person, or most of them, everybody. It all starts with school and with basic education, and that starts with teachers. So why aren't the teachers helped more, and why aren't they more?
Multifamily development.
It's like the very foundation. I don't get it.
That it happens all the time. Communities block new housing everywhere.
People are, when they hear this kind of rhetoric, very confused because they're like, you know, why I don't want to live in a place with 10,000 apartment buildings. It doesn't even make sense to do that. And they're right. No one is saying that there should be every neighborhood in every city should be, 10,000 foot apartment buildings or anything like that.
But even small, gradual changes to zoning laws can have an impact. For example, allowing smaller homes
because the streamers, they got the money.
Or simply allowing duplexes would double capacity for housing in
some
areas. In recent years, some cities like Berkeley, Minneapolis, and Portland have taken the huge step of ending single-family zoning.
Oh, that's cool.
But the problem is nationwide.
The real fix is going to happen when these decisions start being made and start being regulated at the statewide level or at the federal level in some capacity.
Today, the Biden administration is attempting to tackle exclusionary zoning through a $5 billion program that would give money to localities that remove exclusionary zoning policies.
$5 billion, that's it?
But even that may not be enough.
This is more than any presidential administration has done on this topic, either Democrat or Republican. It is also very small in the face of this problem. They want to take action, they recognize how big of a deal it is, but they are not actually willing to create the kind of political blowback from often very high-value voters living in suburban environments.
I would be a president, okay? I would try and present my candidature, but the problem is that I'm Canadian, dude. I won't ever be able to lead your country.
Ending America's housing shortage will require real political willpower.
It is what it is.
And it'll require people across the country to take a look at their own neighborhoods. What gets built, who gets excluded, and how to make homeownership achievable.
I could be Canada Prime Minister though. But what does that do? I feel like that doesn't do much. Canada doesn't, yeah, it's kind of, I mean.